Alright folks, this is Sound of Free, my name is Tuomas, and today we are finally talking about the music of Smile by the Beach Boys, or Smile Sessions. It's a little bit tricky story, most of you folks probably know the story of Smile already. This album or this project has been, well, there's been books written about it, there's been documentaries about it, it's a myth, it's a legend. For the longest of time it was probably the most famous unfinished and unreleased album by, or a rock album, or an album by a rock group or pop group or whatever. Well, it's not really a rock album, but anyway, little bit about the backstory, but not too much. There's so many greatly detailed documentaries about the project, and it's so well known. It's really hard to come up with anything smart that hasn't already been said about it. So I'm not gonna even try to do that. Instead, I'm just gonna focus on my feelings about the album. Actually, some of you guys, my followers, might be actually wondering why I'm now reviewing this one, because in the last video I said that I'm gonna review That's Why God Made the Radio, because I'm doing the reviews chronologically, and that's their final album and the one that I sort of was going to be my next and final review. But then I actually realized that you could actually make an argument that Smile or Smile Sessions is actually their, well, not their final, but second to last album, because it was released 2011, a year before That's Why God Made the Radio, the reunion album. And it actually, from historical point of view, it makes a lot of sense to review this on this spot, because this is the year of Smile. 2011 is the year that the Beach Boys version of Smile was released to the world, and they got, it was a huge thing. They got a lot of press for it, and it actually helped to sort of push the wave and make the reunion tour happen and make it as big as it was. So it actually makes historically a lot of sense to talk about this in this spot, because these days it's sort of, some people have forgotten that it actually was released in 2011, and because it's so easy to think that, oh, it's the 67 thing. Yes, like pretty much all, not all, but 99% of the material in this release comes from the original sessions from 67, but this would not have been ever put out and finished without Brian doing his finished version of Smile in 2004 and releasing that, because that was used as a blueprint to compile the Beach Boys version from those original recordings. It follows the same blueprint and the same structure, but there's some bits and pieces missing because they didn't in the 60s record those pieces. Smile was supposed to be a follow-up album for Pet Sounds, which was a critically acclaimed album, but it wasn't like a huge hit. But it was very successful in the sort of the music world and critically acclaimed, like I said. So Brian really wanted to push boundaries even further. And well, Pet Sounds is very introspective album and sort of has kind of small themes, and it mostly just reflects Brian's inner feelings and thoughts about his personal life around that time. Smile is like complete opposite. So a lot of times these are talked about sort of front to back, Pet Sounds and Smile, and easily compared, but I don't think it's really fair to compare these two, because Smile is completely different. Yeah, it uses some of those same studio production techniques that Brian already used during the Pet Sounds sessions, but otherwise it's totally different. Van Dyke Parks wrote the songs with Brian, and the lyrics are totally different from anything that Brian or the Beach Boys had put out previously, and the themes are much more psychedelic and vague, and sort of they are very poetic. I hate to use that word. They are very poetic, and basically instead of these love songs, well, there's a few sort of love songs on Smile too, but mostly it's about Americana, like the Old West, and you know, in my, well, you can understand these songs in many ways, but here's my take of the sort of the what Smile is about in a nutshell. In my opinion, it's a journey through not only place, because it starts from like the East Coast, and then you sort of move through the United States, and at the end you end up Hawaii, to the like far west. So it's not only about that physical journey, but it's also a journey through time. So when it starts off with A Prayer, it's sort of like this sort of ancient music with only voices, and then you sort of get that Americana section, and it slowly sort of gets more modern and modern. Obviously it's Brian's and Van Dyke's interpretation of what the music might have sounded like back in the old days. They didn't have any idea what it, you know, would have sounded like, but it's sort of a psychedelic, abstract illustration of it, or whatever, you know. And then at the end, we come basically to modern times, and not just 60s, but modern times with Good Vibrations, because it's current. Each time you actually play this album through and you get to Good Vibrations at the end, it's always current. It does not sound like mid-60s music. So in my opinion, that's just one of the biggest genius aspects of this record, because like I mentioned, it's like a journey through space and time within 40 minutes within this one album, and it is phenomenal. So it was scrapped, unfinished, left to their shelves in '67, and there's a whole bunch of stories about that. Anyway, Beach Boys released Smile is Smile instead. I did a full review of that one already, I don't know, like a year or two ago. Love that album. It's totally different from this one, and easily people make the mistake that they compare Smile is Smile to Smile, which I don't think you should do. They are so different, and both have their, you know, strengths. Let's just dive into the album and the music. First of all, one of my favorite Beach Boys album covers. Just amazing artwork. Love the back cover too, and this is actually the artwork that would have been, well, it wouldn't have been a gatefold, but the front cover at least, and I believe the back cover too, are the cover arts that were done already in '67, and they already even pressed some of these covers to the storage. So this is what it would have looked like, and I think it looks phenomenal. In the '60s, it wouldn't have been a double LP, so it's an interesting thing really to think about what would have been left of the album if it actually would have been released in the '60s. And if you actually think about that, and you sort of scrape all the, I don't want to say filler, but sort of the transitional bits and pieces that you have on the album, you have a freaking amazing collection of tunes, which doesn't mean like that I don't like the way it is over here, but yeah, if you just cut off like 5 or 10 minutes, oh man, you got like the best music ever. Anyway, let's just go into it. I'm not gonna talk about each track super precisely, but let's just go through with them anyway. So like I said, it starts off with A Prayer, little hymn, this 1 minute long section, super beautiful melody. I think that's one of Brian's better compositions, just amazing arrangement. And like we all know, this was actually originally released on 2020, and I believe this recording that is released over here actually uses some of those things that they recorded. I think they added some or parts during the 2020 sessions. So I think this is the same version, but correct me if I am wrong. And then it sort of flows to G, which is a little snippet of a song, which is sort of a kind of like a doo-wop thing, but it's this section of an, you know, old song, but it's just a tiny little section that sort of introduces the Wild West theme or landscape. And then the third track, the first sort of real song on the album, is Heroes and Villains. And this version actually differs totally from the Smiley Smile or the original single version. I prefer this version over the single version any day. This song, and especially the music video that they have, the animated music video they've put out in 2011. I remember around that time, actually, when the music video was new, listening to that song and watching that music video. I'm not sure if I even knew back then who sort of like which member is which, and you know, so on. I didn't really recognize them. I was just mesmerized by that video, and this song truly made me a hardcore Beach Boys fan. I fell in love with it immediately because I hadn't ever heard anything like it. And this is the first version that I heard of the song. When I actually then went back later and listened to the original single version and the live versions and so on, and I was kind of bummed out that, you know, the original version is kind of lackluster. Like, it's just underwhelming in a way. All those sections and the way it starts out rocking, and then you got the Margarita section, which is just so beautiful. I love that section. And yeah, oh man, it's just one of my all-time favorite tunes. Do You Like Worms? Roll Plymouth Rock, which is sort of similar musically to Heroes and Villains, kind of. I love that riff. That I think sometimes it's called like Bicycle Rider or whatever. Do You Like Worms riff, or Heroes and Villains riff, or whatever you want to call that. But that jingly, spooky theme that sort of plays throughout the track, that's probably, I don't know, like maybe my all-time favorite musical moment in all of the Beach Boys catalog. It's just so phenomenal. It's so simple, kind of like, it's just so, I don't know what it is about it, but it's so freaking spooky and catchy, and I don't know what it is about it, but it's magical. And then the sort of the side one, well, it doesn't end with that because there's one more great song at the end, but then we get the sort of first section of little snippets. Once again, like, well, kind of like in the beginning, we get I'm in Great Shape, Barnyard, My Only Sunshine, The Old Master Painter / You Are My Sunshine. So many sort of little snippets of tunes, and Dennis sings beautifully. Basically it's his only lead vocal on the album, kind of. That you know, my only sunshine part, that's really beautiful. But yeah, like I love all these little snippets of songs, but I wouldn't really call these as, you know, something that showcases the brilliance of Smile, really, you know. So it's a nice transitional piece. It's sectioned or paced really well, and they flow really well. But at the end of side one, we get to Cabin Essence, which just phenomenal, just perfect music. Originally released on 2020, once again. Just, what can you really say about a song like this that is just perfect? I don't know. I'm speechless. Just come on, listen to the track, and how can you say that it's not perfect? It is just, music does not get any better than that. That's just the truth. It's just so freaking wonderful. Side 2 starts off with Wonderful, and once again, really beautiful song, the melody, the lyrics and everything. And this version is, I'm not sure if I'd call this version my favorite version of it, because I don't know, I probably prefer the live versions of this tune. Somehow this Smile Sessions version feels undercooked for me. The Smiley Smile version is interesting too, but it's very different, so I wouldn't say that I prefer that one over this one. And then side 2 sort of flows into what I would like to call a surfs up suite or whatever. So it starts off with Look, Song for Children, and then we get child is father of the man, and then serves up. So in my eyes, all of those sort of flow into one piece, and they build an emotion and feeling, and then when we get to serves up at the end of this side, it just all sort of comes together. A lot of people always like talk about, yeah, God only knows, that's the great Brian Wilson song, but and Brian was also like, he didn't really care for Surf's Up. I don't know why, because when I heard this tune, I've told this story before too, but the first time I heard this tune, I was just sitting on my computer with probably like some crappy headphones, and I remember being on some Beach Boys forum, and then there was people talking about like how great of a song Surf's Up is. So anyway, I went to YouTube and I was like, okay, Surf's Up, and I was like, okay, this is really pretty, really beautiful, and I was really moved by the sort of the first section, and then we get to the second section with Brian singing his part, so the song just changes middle way through, when that second section starts. I was just blown away, like in that moment. Even I remember being like, can you actually do it? Like, is this possible? Like, you can do this in a song? Like, what? Like, I just had never heard that. It was done so unexpectedly and so perfectly, and it just felt right, and it was just amazing. And I remember being like, I still don't really get the lyrics, but I remember being very emotional, about the lyrics. They really touched me, even on the first listen. I thought they were so beautiful. And yeah, and then when the song comes to that last part, and it just comes to a climax, and it's just perfect. I think Surf's Up might be the Beach Boys' best song and Brian's best composition. I really think that way. I think it's really sad that Surf's Up is not a song that everybody knows, because it really should be this big song of the 20th century that everybody knows and respects and so on. But it's not. Even like casual Beach Boys fans don't really know this tune, so it's kind of crazy to me. Anyway, I could talk about this, the brilliance of it, for 30 minutes, so let's move forward. Side 3 is then the last side of the album, because even though there's side 4, it is bonus material. So officially, the Small Sessions version ends off with side 3, and side 3 starts off with I Wanna Be Around /workshop, so it's basically just this little groovy piano piece with workshop, like hammer sounds and nailing and stuff like that. It's very groovy, very nice. Sort of an introduction for this last section, or what you call those, movement. And then it flows into vegetables, and I love this song, especially this version. The Smiley Smile version is fun too, but I think this one is just a sort of the production and the arrangement, and it's so neatly arranged. Then we get Holidays, which is, I believe this version is totally instrumental. I could be wrong, but I think it is. But this is one of those songs that then Brian worked on his version earlier, and actually Van Dyke wrote new lyrics, and they did a full like lyrical thing to it. It's a neat piece. Anyway, fourth track on side 3 is Wind Chimes, and this one is another classic, sort of similar to Cavinescence in some way, maybe. Very chill, moody piece. I really love it, but it's kind of overlooked a lot of times because it's not, maybe it's not so grandiose. It's sort of laid back, so yeah. Anyway, I love it. I think it's a masterpiece once again. And then we get to the end. This is probably one of the next song is probably one of the most talked about songs on the album, and it is The Elements, Fire. or Mrs. O'Leary's Cow. And this song is actually the song that Brian won his Grammy for, which is kind of funny. But they use over here some of the vocals from the Smiley Smile song Woody Woodpecker Symphony, which works really fine. But it's a totally different song. I think all the whistles and especially at the beginning are kind of obnoxious, and I know that's sort of the point. But if you sort of mix those whistle sounds and those sirens or whatnot a little bit lower, I think I would enjoy this a lot more. But it is a very heavy tune, the drums and everything. It's very hard rocking, and sort of you could really totally imagine some heavy metal band doing a cover of this one, and you wouldn't have to make it any different. You would have to just play it like the Beach Boys or the Wrecking Crew, studio musicians that Brian used are doing it over here. You wouldn't have to change a note or even anything about the way they're playing it, because this recording in itself is just so heavy. And yeah, I really love it, and especially love the way it's paced over here, because then that leads to Love to Say Dada, which is sort of the water thing, very cool, laid back, and that eventually that evolved into Cool Water. Then in 69 or 70, I think 69, they worked on that anyway. So it has that water element in it, and it doesn't have lyrics. It's just this groovy sort of chill vibe, and I think it works really well as a transitional piece into Good Vibrations, which over here we actually have a little bit of different version of Good Vibrations. This is the so-called full version of the song, because it's otherwise pretty much the same recording as is the original 7-inch single, but they have another section at the end, which I really love, this choir thing or whatever you want to call that. And then the tag lasts like, I don't know, like maybe 20 seconds longer or something like that. And I love it. I think this is the definite version of Good Vibrations. It's just perfect. Well, the original one is perfect as well. I love the way it is, but I think this one just, I don't know, just is better. It is just so lush and rich, and the song is just perfect. Mike's lyrics and everybody just coming together. I think this song is just a great example of all of the Beach Boys being just phenomenal musicians, because first of all you got Brian and Mike writing the song, Brian writing the music and Mike writing the lyrics, and then you get the session musicians basically playing the track, but Brian arranging and producing and so on, Carl doing the lead vocals on verses, and Brian doing actually parts of the verses, the high parts at the beginning of verses too. So it's basically Brian and Carl doing the lead vocals and verses, and then you get Mike doing the lead vocal and chorus, and then you get Dennis playing the organ at that silent part, and yeah, so, and obviously Al and so on, everybody in the background vocals. So you got everybody contributing to this one. Good Vibrations is not something that Brian just cooked up alone in the studio. It's a real group effort. It's just a perfect song. It's probably the best, most perfect pop song ever written and put on tape. What else can you really say about it? And Good Vibrations then ends off the album. And I guess the big question, then probably one of the most asked questions these days about this project, is which version should I get, which version should I listen to, and so on. Don't listen to AI versions, just put that one out there. I think without the Brian 2004 version, this would not have ever been put out. It would have not been finished It would have been impossible to finish it and release it if Brian hadn't done his version, his finished version in 2004. So in that sense, and that one is actually finished, in that sense that's better, but there's a but. I still think these original recordings do have a special magic to them, and the Beach Boys voices, and even though the songs maybe do not flow so well into each other compared to the Brian 2004 version, where they really thought out so well the way it's structured and the way the songs sort of float just into one another, so there's not these stop starts and so on. It just works as a full piece, as a sort of huge symphony. But anyway, my preferred way to experience Smile is actually the concert over here, the DVD. I think to witness it with your own eyes, with Brian playing and singing and just orchestrating the whole thing, is the best way to experience Smile. But if I do listen to it, like want to only listen to it in my car or whatever, I do play this one. I rarely play the Brian version. It does have its merits too. What do you think about Smile? Which version do you think is the best one? Which one do you prefer? Let's continue in the comment section. I would love to know your thoughts about it. Hopefully see you soon again on the next video. Take care. Bye bye.